We are going to introduce the panelists. Each of them will have 5 minutes to speak about their particular agency. My role is to just give an overview of how this group came together and what types of issues we work on. My name is Serena Muhammad. I'm with the St. Louis Mental Health Board, and we were asked to do this session to specifically talk about resources that are available for affordable housing development. I'm going to begin by talking about the Mental Health and Housing Transformation Project, which is actually a grant that the St. Louis Mental Health Board received from SAMHSA to focus on ways to transform the availability of affordable housing for people who have serious mental illness. As a part of the strategy to transform this system, we decided that we needed to have a platform to convene funders who are working on housing. So we developed the Housing Funders Group. This is a list of all of the members of the Housing Funders Group. Of course, we're not all represented on this panel, but we did have a few folks who volunteered to represent the group and to talk specifically about what their particular agency does and how it ties into the overall goal of the group. So the Housing Funders Group for 2014 actually has 2 goals that they decided to focus on. The first being to build capacity for development and service provision by funding relevant training for developers, lenders, and consultants. So one of the things that we realize is that there's a limited amount of resources that are available even when we all put all of our resources together. And if people don't know how to access those resources or how to go about doing these types of projects, then we're not able to leverage them to the extent possible. So they really wanted to look at training as a revenue or as an avenue for making sure the information is out there to fully utilize the resources that are available. The second one is to create opportunities to educate and involve the housing community in the production of permanent supportive housing. So I'm not sure how much this particular topic has been addressed throughout the day, but this group actually focuses on not only the development of affordable housing, but the services that go along with that. So the definition of permanent supportive housing is a cost-effective combination of permanent, affordable housing with services that helps people live more stable, productive lives. Supportive housing works well for people who face the most complex challenges, individuals and families who are not only homeless, but who also have very low incomes and serious, persistent issues that may include substance use and mental illness. So it's a very focused target audience that this group is looking at trying to help through permanent supportive housing. So the key is that it's not just the housing, it's the services that go along with that. And when you hear from the panelists, you'll hear how each individual agency addresses making sure that both of those elements are present. One of the things that happened as a result of the transformation grant is we commissioned a study that was done by the Corporation for Supportive Housing to actually identify the number of units that are needed in the St. Louis region to meet the need for permanent supportive housing. This next slide just kind of identifies how those numbers came together. And this is from a study of a point-in-time census count for homeless population that was done in 2012. So these numbers are about 2 years old, but this is the goal that the group is working toward. Ultimately, we believe that we need at least 782 units of permanent supportive housing in the city of St. Louis to address the need that exists. So now I will turn it over to the panel to talk specifically about how their particular agency focuses in on supporting affordable housing, specifically related to the permanent supportive housing aspect of it. I'm going to introduce each panelist, and then they're going to talk about their specific funding stream. So our first panelist is April Ford-Griffin, who is the Executive Director for the Affordable Housing Commission.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank everybody that stayed around to hear our information. It's been a fun, full day, and I have truly enjoyed my time here. As Serena said, I'm April Ford-Griffin. I'm the Executive Director of the Affordable Housing Commission. For those of you who may not know, the commission was created through an ordinance and a vote of the people to help provide a separate pool of funds instead of our city's general revenue. Outside of that, we have a use tax that creates about $5 million a year, and what that has to be used on is health care for the uninsured and underinsured, and for low to moderate income residents housing initiatives. And so you heard a lot of talk about also in the creation of housing, working with those who provide services. And so our funding does both, which makes it exciting for me. Our agency is a city department, but we also have a commission of 11 members. Those members represent a diverse segment of the city by having representatives that are represent residents in public housing, represent the health industry, represent real estate agents, represent banking institutions, as well as representative of the disabled community and several others. So that just kind of gives you an idea of what we try to do to make sure that we have someone at the table that represents all segments within our St. Louis community. All of our funds must be spent on residents and families who are 80% or below the median income, and we do go by the federal guidelines. At least 40% of our funds have to be spent on individuals and families that are 20% or below the median income, which once again gets you the low to moderate income. Part of our mission is to promote city living and neighborhood preservation, stabilization, and to produce affordable housing, accessible housing, as you heard the panel right before us, and support services that will help enhance the quality of life for those in need. Since established in 2002, the Affordable Housing Commission has funded 1,391 units of housing, which has created a total of 2,931 affordable and market rate units. The Commission has invested close to $23 million in this time, and that, once again, is going towards affordable units, which then has helped to leverage other funding, which brings us to about $452 million in St. Louis City that has been invested in creating affordable units. Our department generally holds a funding round once a year. Last year we did a spring round, but we're not always able to do that. This year our round will open up September the 22nd, and it will be open for 7 weeks. It will close on November the 7th. We brought some folders which are up on the front table for anybody who's interested that has our website and our contact information, so that you can go there on September the 22nd when we put out our NOFA that will state how much money we are awarding this year. This year we are fortunate to be able to award $5 million. In the past, it hasn't always been $5 million. Last year, it was about $4.4 million, and so we're happy to have $5 million to award out. Once again, we will advertise in the newspaper, on our website, in several places to help get the word out. We also send a notice out to everybody who's ever received funding from us since the beginning of our establishment. And so there are several things that I wanted to let you know about for those who may be interested or want to pass the information on. We provide funding for two types of development. One, services that come from nonprofit agencies, and then to developers who are required to have partnered with a nonprofit neighborhood organization that's in support of you doing the development for residential housing that you've proposed to us in that particular neighborhood, as well as support letters from the alderman. Nonprofit agencies and developers may apply for 3 types of funding: service-related grants, loans and other subsidies for rental housing production, and loans and other subsidies for sale housing developments. And so there are actually 3 applications. You would fill out the one that pertains to what it is you're proposing to do. And it's nothing that stops you from proposing to do all 3. We try to make sure that by our January commission meeting, we have given staff recommendations to our commissions, and they take a vote on which proposals we are going to fund. I can give you an example of the categories in which we generally have accepted applications because it falls within our mission. We have funding sources for accessibility modifications, for home repair, for education and counseling as it relates to affordable housing, which would be something like financial literacy, even employment opportunities. Also, Youth Build is one that has been a great example because they do the repairs, but they also are training youth so that they can prepare them for the workforce. And so there's a connection there with getting our youth ready to go out into the workforce and employable, and also creating repair for someone that was necessary that could not afford otherwise to make the repair on their homes. Also, we provide money for homeless prevention and shelters. A big part of what we do is work at ending chronic homelessness, as well as providing funds for rental, mortgage, and utility assistance to individuals which fall within that income guideline. And our last one is transitional housing. This year, the contracts that we're currently funding, which were awarded in the fall of last year, we funded 42 social service nonprofit agencies in the city of St. Louis, and we selected 5 residential projects, which consisted of 3 for sale and 2 rental, and one of those were rehab. Each year, we do set priorities within our NOFA. Those are, one is you have to be serving people 80% and below the median income. The other is that you have to propose housing or shelter for persons and families with incomes at or below 20% of the median area income. We developed last year 2 new priorities, one to try to help our city become a more sustainable city, and so we will give you a priority this year if you meet at least 5 of the objectives that are in the city's adopted sustainability plan that is for our service providers. If you are a developer going to be doing construction of some sort, you are asked to meet at least 8 of those objectives, and we'll give you a priority. Also, we ask that as we try to make sure that people of low to moderate income are going upward instead of remaining the same or down in their success in trying to get to work, to school, transportation, we will give a priority to developments that are within half a mile of a rapid transit bus line or a Metrolink station. This year, we have a new initiative, and we are setting aside $1 million for home repair to homeowners who live in the city of St. Louis. And that money will be awarded to nonprofits who apply for the funding that will then administer the program out into the residents. And so we think that that's very significant as we are talking about how we maintain the values of our properties in the city of St. Louis, and we know that we have 2,000 people on the waiting list for home repair with the city's agencies that have been doing in the past the home repair program. And so we feel that if we can take $1 million and help focus on the people who have been waiting and have no other means of making these necessary repairs, that will help us go a long way. And so we're happy and excited about the new initiatives. We hope that you will go to our website and get further information. As was stated previously, there are a couple of things that we require that help also with the accessibility of the properties, and that is that all our new construction units must be universally designed, and all of our AHC assisted rehabilitated housing must be lead safe when construction is complete, and all new construction single family for sale homes receiving our trust fund dollars must be built with energy saving features. And so we are steady trying to work and improve the products that are put out where we can try to help influence what goes on the market, and we know that it will certainly be a benefit to the residents, as well as, like I said, a big part, actually about 60% of what we fund are social service programs to help benefit those in need and of the most vulnerable population. And so if you have any further questions or need more details, please don't forget to take one of the green folders at the front of the room. Thank you.
Thank you, April. So our next panelist is Justin Jackson, who is the Interim Director of the Homeless Services Division for the City of St. Louis. Justin.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'll be very brief with my comments. majority of my discussion anytime I have a panel typically comes during the Q&A session. So again, while I'll be brief, I'll be happy to answer any questions during the Q&A session following all of our presenters. The St. Louis Continuum of Care is designed to address the critical problem of homelessness through a coordinated community-based process of identifying those in need of housing and providing services to address those needs. The approach is predicated on the understanding that homelessness is not caused merely by a lack of shelter, but involves a variety of underlying unmet needs, physical, economic, and social. The St. Louis COC is a network of nearly 70 agencies in the St. Louis area that provide emergency shelter, transitional housing, and permanent housing for homeless individuals. The City of St. Louis is the lead entity for the continuum, and since 2005, the main focus of the COC has been providing permanent supportive housing for homeless individuals, specifically those that are chronically homeless. At this point, I do want to be specific about the differences between a homeless individual and a chronically homeless individual. We adhere strictly to the definition that has been given by HUD. A majority of our funding comes from HUD. So oftentimes there's a misconception in the public about a homeless individual and what criteria an individual has to meet to become homeless. A homeless individual is a person that is simply living in an area not meant for human habitation, living in a car, living in an alley, living in an abandoned building, somewhere in an area that does not provide a roof over their head. A chronically homeless individual is an individual who suffers from homelessness but has suffered from reoccurring episodes of homelessness in addition to having a disability. We have found that individuals who are chronically homeless utilize more resources on average than the average homeless person, so it has been a focus of ours to provide housing for individuals who are chronically homeless in an effort to better manage the homeless population. The local continuum of care strategy is designed around three basic goals: to help program participants obtain and remain in permanent housing, to help participants increase skills and income, thereby allowing participants to secure an income to live as independently as possible, and finally, to help the participants achieve greater self-determination. By achieving greater self-determination, that enables the participants to gain the needed confidence to make the transition out of homelessness. The St. Louis COC strategy represents a maximum participation of community-wide organizations and providers to meet the full spectrum of needs of homeless individuals and families, as well as to identify gaps and priorities in the provision of services to homeless persons. The COC identifies, coordinates, and evaluates the needs of homeless persons and then provides linkages to emergency shelter, community service, and most important, housing. The Homeless Services Division 2014 Continuum of Care RFP will be issued in the next few weeks. The funding is made available through the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. The main focus of this RFP will be the securing of project sponsors to continue to provide housing for chronically homeless individuals and to provide services for those who are in need of emergency shelter, rapid rehousing, and those at risk of homelessness. Over the last few years, we have focused heavily on providing services for agencies who are able to assist homeless individuals who can be rapidly rehoused. When I say rapidly rehoused, we are slowly stepping away from just rerouting individuals to emergency shelter. HUD's initiative, as well as the city's initiative, in addition to providing permanent supportive housing, is to provide immediate housing for individuals who are homeless. Instead of placing an individual in a shelter where they have a maximum of 90 days, we have found over a few initiatives over the last few years that providing individuals with sustainable housing is a better solution to their actual homelessness. By placing them in housing and then providing them with the wraparound services that they need in order to cure their housing, or at least put them in connection with the services that are needed on a regular basis, have been more beneficial to our homeless population. We have had several initiatives starting in 2009 with our Hope is Moving In program. Following that, we had an initiative where we rehoused individuals who were part of encampments in the local area. We referred to this program as the Beach Program, the beginning of the end of abolishing chronic homelessness. We have followed that up since that time period with a initiative this past July, which was our most recent initiative, and we were very successful in this initiative, which was titled Operation Reveille. This wasn't an initiative where we actually identified homeless individuals on the day of our point in time count and providing them with housing that day. We estimated that we would identify around 50 individuals who would be homeless, and I'm sorry, I forgot to include something very important. Part of our Operation Reveille program was that those individuals were homeless veterans. So by identifying homeless veterans on that day of our point in time count, we were able to provide housing immediately on that day for individuals who had been homeless for periods up to 3 to 4 years. Back to the funding. All agencies currently within the COC are required to complete an RFP application for renewal funding. The Homeless Services Division 2014 Continuum of Care application will be available for pickup at the Homeless Services Division or through the city website, which is www.stlouis-mo.gov. I would like to provide everybody with the number to our office in case there are any questions about needing to pick up a copy. The number to our Homeless Services Division office is area code 314-657-1704. At that particular time, when applications are available, we will be specific about when the applications are due back to our office, and we will be sure to include in our application all the requirements needed to complete applications and indicate what our focuses will be. But historically, our focus has been on providing services for maintaining the chronic homeless population, as well as we're always encouraging agencies who have a strength in providing rapid rehousing to apply. Feel free to contact the Homeless Services Division with any questions, and as I stated earlier, I will be available to answer any questions during our question and answer period. Thank you. Again, that telephone number is 657-1704.
Thank you, Justin. And for those of you who don't know, there's a binder that you would have received in your packet when you registered that has all of the application materials. They may not be the ones for this year, but they're samples of the types of requests for proposals that the funders usually put out, and they also contain contact information as well. I do want to emphasize that we've heard from two of our panelists who represent St. Louis City. One of the goals of the Housing Funders Group is to make sure that we have a regional approach and that we're coordinating activities across the region. So our next speaker, our next panelist is Katrina Sommer, and she is with St. Louis County. Katrina?
Good afternoon. I know it's Friday afternoon, so I promise to be concise. I represent the St. Louis County Home Consortium, which receives just under $3 million in federal funding from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. And that $3 million needs to be spread out over St. Louis County, St. Charles County, Jefferson County, and then the entitlement communities of cities of St. Charles, O'Fallon, and Florissant. So there's kind of a broad area that we're covering, and we try and do so very efficiently. Our consortium members predominantly fund a home ownership program, which leaves approximately $1.5 million left for housing development in St. Louis County. We fund rental and for sale developments in the form of gap financing. Due to our limited availability of funding, we have instilled a cap of $100,000 per property, and that's much lower than the HUD allowed limits. But what we're actually shooting for is closer to a $20,000 gap so that we can really stretch our money as farther as possible. In addition to the high demand for special needs housing, there's also an increased demand for aging in place. The median age of the residents in St. Louis County is higher than any other Missouri county in the metro area. As you've heard before from Dennis Kazo from our office, we do have an accessibility modification program. But for the homes that we're constructing, either constructing or rehabbing through our home program, we want to make sure that those are accessible as well. So all of the homes that go through our program must have some elements of universal design to them. If it's new construction, we expect the whole 9 yards. We expect accessible bathrooms, kitchens, doorways, hallways. If it's a rehab, depending on the level of rehab, we ask that they incorporate as many features as possible. But we don't necessarily restrict that the homes are then sold to people with disabilities. We just want the number of units that are accessible to be increased in St. Louis County so that when those homes do change hands and people who need accessible housing, there's units available to them. We have an open application policy, and our applications are available online. Our website is www.stlouisco.com. That's stlouisco.com. And there's no application deadlines. But special consideration is giving to projects with, that are serving special needs population or happen to be in our targeted areas of Spanish Lake or Limay. And as our funding comes from HUD, there are certain income and long-term monitoring restrictions and other restrictions that apply from the grants. So that's pretty much all I have for you. I'll turn it back over to Serena. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And you'll notice that we're one slide ahead, and I haven't been pressing this button, so I don't know how that's happening. But hopefully this slide will not move because this is the correct one for our next speaker, who is Matt Nordmann, Director of Community Development with IFF.
Good afternoon. As Serena indicated, my name is Matt Nordmann. I am the Director of Community Development for IFF. As for those in the audience that know me, talking for only 5 minutes is quite a challenge because I can talk about lint for 5 minutes, but I'll try to make this brief. IFF is a 26-year-old community development financial institution, which is a designation we received from the U.S. Department of Treasury. We are, quite simply stated, a nonprofit lender to other nonprofits. We play sort of three potential roles in the affordable and supportive housing world. Primarily, when we started out in 1988, we are a lender. That is the bulk of what IFF does. We have a variety of products, some of which are geared specifically toward affordable housing being produced by conjunction with the low-income housing tax credit, but we also have loan products that are available for other types of affordable and supportive housing that kind of have different rules and regulations. I'm going to stay out of the weeds, which is one way I will stick to my time frame, and urge you to go onto our pretty thorough and robust website, which is www.iff.org. So that, and you can go onto the Capital Solutions, which is our fancy word for loans, and get all the information about all of our different products that we have. A couple of highlights on the loan side I would want to mention for those who are thinking about producing or doing a affordable housing project is that we are also a member of the Federal Home Loan Bank of Chicago. And so if you come to us with a project, we may be in a situation where we can do, say, a first mortgage loan as well as sponsor your application to the Federal Home Loan Bank. A typical client for us is an organization that has been in existence for 5 years, has about $500,000 of annual revenues, and this is kind of an important point, also has audited financial statements. That's kind of a big deal for us. I urge anyone who is thinking about a project that is interested in learning more about IFF on the finance side, on the capital side, to contact us and let's talk through what your project is. So rather than you spending a bunch of time filling out one application only to find out that, oh wait, that's not the right product for your type of project, I'd urge you to contact us to discuss what you're thinking about and to see whether or not we have a product that's going to fit your needs. So that's the lending side. The second thing that IFF does is about 9 years into our existence, we realized that we had some great nonprofit clients who, say, an early childhood development center that did a great job, ran a great organization, they were bursting at the seams, and they wanted to buy a building and rehab that building so that they could accommodate their huge waiting list. They were fabulous at running an early childhood development center, but they didn't know anything about real estate development. And so 9 years into our existence, we created a consulting group which assists nonprofits, and affordable housing is one of the ways in which we would do it, assists nonprofits to get their project completed. So we essentially can be their experts on a consultative basis rather than them trying to hire that kind of talent on their payroll. And I can tell you our prices and what we charge for our services is very, very modest. One of the ways that we put this into play in the affordable and supportive housing world is we are headquartered in Chicago. We began a program where we worked with social service providers to develop housing units under, in Illinois, it's called a Community Integrated Living Arrangement, or otherwise known as a CILA, where we partner with organizations. In some cases, what we do is it's called a turnkey development, where we would do everything. We would acquire the land, we would clear it, build it, and when everything was 100% ready to go, we then sold that completed piece of property under a pre-existing, predetermined price to our social service partner. We financed the sale, and then they owned it, but they didn't have to engage in the real estate development themselves. In other cases, we have actually been the owner for a longer period of time and leased it to this service provider because they weren't ready to own property, with the idea that they would purchase it from us at a predetermined date in the future. The third and final way that we are engaged in affordable and supportive housing is about 2 years ago, we opened a division called our Community Strategies Group, and I am the first non-Chicago-based member of this relatively new group. And what we're doing is we're looking for projects such as supportive housing where we can kind of duplicate what I just described for you under the CILA program, where we would partner together with social service agencies to provide supportive affordable housing. So we would try to find funding streams, because the CILA program is Illinois only, but to accomplish the same thing. Additionally, my Community Strategies Group will also engage in a variety of community development projects where either by ourselves or with a partner, where we're building and developing property for a community need that simply can't get done without us either doing it on our own or partnering with another organization. So that is how we play in this area. Again, our website has got tons and tons of information, iff.org, and thank you.
Okay, thank you, Matt. And our final panelist is Jama Dodson, who's the Executive Director of the St. Louis Mental Health Board.
Good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me? Am I speaking into the mic? Okay, great. Thanks a lot again for sticking around. I really appreciate your being here. It helps to not speak to an empty room. The St. Louis Mental Health Board probably is not the first organization that you think of being involved in housing, but I think I'll be able to illustrate a little bit for you in a moment just why we are involved in housing. First of all, we are here really as an organization whose mission is to serve and improve the lives of the most vulnerable people in our community, specifically those with mental health or behavioral health conditions and children, which is one of our latest tax efforts. We've just recently passed our vision, and I'm going to breeze by this quickly, but I just want to draw your attention to a couple of things. On our vision is to improve the lives of the city residents by investing and participating in a coordinated system of behavioral health services that are aligned with community priorities. And I think as you heard people talk about the continuum of care, no one single organization can fully serve a population until they work together to see what the continuum can provide all the things that are necessary. And we have that same view about the funding and the resource side of things. No one single one of us, as you can tell from the presentations, none of us have huge dollars that we're working with to make housing available. And so we feel like, and part of why this Housing Funders Group is even established is that we can work together, and we want to strive to do even more of that over the coming years, to work together to find our own special niche so that we can really have a community that is providing for the needs of folks that need permanent supportive housing. Just a little history about how we got into the housing development business. The Community Mental Health Fund was established about 20 years ago, and over the years that fund would have slight surpluses at the end of the year, and then with the economy growing, began to have accumulated a little bit of a modest reserve. And one of the things that our board has been very conscious of is wanting to make sure that any reserves that we have are pumped back into the community to their fullest extent. But what we also know about reserves is they are only, that's not recurring money. That's just sitting there in the reserve bucket, and when it's gone, it's gone. So we wanted to be able to look at something that would, with the mental health fund, meet the mission of that fund, but also be the non-recurring kind of investment that we could really be financially responsible for. So as a result, they selected permanent supportive housing as the choice, which kills two birds with one stone, if you excuse my phrase. It serves people who have behavioral health disorders and provides the investment for one-time costs that we can then make those available to those folks. The people that we are talking about are also the same people that our mental health fund is designed to serve and is by law and by statute required to serve. The folks with behavioral health disorders that are in recovery, that are requiring frequent interventions that relate to emergencies or relapses, or are diagnosed with one or more chronic other conditions. The mental health board itself has a 13-member board. Beneficiaries always have to be residents of the city of St. Louis, and the board has delegated the responsibility for the review and recommendations on permanent supportive housing projects to a 5-member committee that is comprised of trustees and volunteers with expertise in finance and real estate development. One of the things that makes us a little bit different is we are also, as much as we care about the housing, making sure housing is right for the potential tenants, we're very, very concerned that the services are being provided to the folks that need them in the appropriate manner to what their needs are. So we focus much of our attention on results, and we'll continue to do that as a funder of housing programs. The process to request our funding, number one, the first step, which is not up there, is that we need to get a letter of intent from you. And I have some samples at the desk that I'll provide to you a little bit later. A letter of intent that it goes before the committee. If the committee sees that there is a fit there and it makes sense and you have good, you have a good argument, then they invite you to apply for a full application. That's where the slide takes over, and if you can read it, the Housing Development Committee meets to review your applications within 2 weeks of receipt. And by the way, I need to preface that by saying now we are not on a calendar basis, we're on a rolling basis. If we get an application or a letter of intent sent to us, we will look at it, no matter when it's sent. Within 2 weeks of receipt of that application, we will set up a meeting of the committee, and then the committee will invite the applicant representatives to sit with us or to be available by phone because we want to talk with you. Sometimes we have questions, and it makes sense for us to sit in the same room together. After meeting with the applicants, the committee then discusses the application and takes a vote as to whether to approve the amount and what the forgivable loan that is to be recommended to the full board of trustees. If it's recommended, then a resolution is put forward at the Board of Trustees meeting, at the very next meeting that we can schedule, and then the Board of Trustees votes whether to approve or not. Following the board vote, we let you know within the next business day of what the decision was. From the date that you submit the letter of intent to the board's approval should take between 8 to 10 weeks. So it's not an immediate thing, but it's fairly quick. Then the forgivable loan process is processed through our attorneys, and it requires a due diligence effort that will take some time, both of our time and of the applicant's time, to essentially create a real estate close. And when that closes, the funds are typically transferred to a title company, and then they transfer the funds on to the awardee in accordance with the agreement. Letter of intent questions, I'm going to breeze by these things. This is just to give you an idea. The letter of intent is very brief. We do not require a ton of responses to this, but it's just a project summary first. Then who is your target population? What are the behavioral health services that you feel are needed for that target population? What's your project team in terms of the development team? Who's your architect? Who are you developing with? Is there a property manager? Is there a service provider? Who is your team that's going to put this all together? Then looking at what you can provide as a preliminary project financing picture and a budget. And then finally, what are the project operations going to be after the project has been developed? How is it going to be supportive and sustainable to continue to serve these folks over time? And the time that we have establishes a 10-year forgivable loan. So if you're approved and the board approves it and everything closes, then every year we will do a review to ensure that all of the conditions of our agreement are continuing, that you continue to serve the client population that you've identified, that you continue to have the proper housing arrangements for them. And as long as those things are being met, then 1/10 of the loan is forgiven every year until the end of the last year, the 10th year, it will be completely forgiven. Basically, what we look for in order to review the program for fitness to move on to an application is that we want you to have clarity on the housing and service needs of future tenants. If you have a site identified, how many units are they and why is it a good fit for the tenants? And if you don't have a site, what type of facility is being sought and why? That you have an understanding of the different roles of the developer, service provider, and property manager and who will do what. I think there's too many occasions, and this has been mentioned before, where it's really important to have the A game from the parties that are working together. If you're a great service provider but with very little development experience, our recommendation is don't try to go to school to learn to be a developer. Get a good developer to work with you as a partner and understand where each of your roles fit. Have a realistic plan for revenue and expenses, and also have a realistic plan for the post-development operational time period. If you have good things in those areas, we will very certainly move you on to an invitation to apply. And again, as I mentioned before, we have the funding is in the form of a 10-year forgivable loan, and our maximum amount is $250,000 or 80% of project costs, whichever is less. Although from time to time we will entertain somewhat higher than $250,000, but it would have to have be a very good reason. But it hovers in that area. This is just a snapshot of the projects that we have forgivable loans out now. The Alm Hopewell Center on Laclede Avenue, they have 4 units. Preferred Family Healthcare, Rauschenbach, has 6 units. Grace Hill Settlement House at Strodman Place has 2. Peter and Paul Community Services, Garfield Place, will have 15 when they're finished. And then our most recent closing is the Queen of Peace Center on Miami Street, which will have 8 units. And that's a total of 35 units since we began the $1 million allocation that the board approved at its last cycle. In addition to that, we had prior to that 42 other units had been created with support from the mental health board. So we have been involved in making investments in about 77 permanent supportive housing units at this time so far. So those are our stats, and we are pleased to take questions after them.
Thank you, Jama. Okay, so that concludes our presentation, and I know we're getting to the end of the conference in total. So I think what we'll do, if any of the panelists need to be excused, I know we ran a little bit over time, feel free to do that. Your colleagues can certainly field questions for you. But if we have any questions at this time, please step up to the mic. Maybe time for 1 or 2 questions if we have any. And if not, then I will turn it over to Charles. All right, thank you.
just quickly, I want to thank the panelists this afternoon, who I think on a large part told us a lot about what we need to do as a city and a region, not only in terms of disabilities, immigrant and large families, but also where the money may be to do some of those kinds of things. With that, I will thank all of you all. I appreciate you staying all day long for our first conference. And thank you. Please drive safely. And we look forward to not only putting all the information up on the website, but certainly having another conference possibly next year. Thank you all. Good night.